communication skills are key. You need to tell your story, the story of your company. You need to sell your company constantly. You're constantly pitching. You're either pitching to investors, you're either pitching to future clients, or you're constantly pitching. And also, you're talking to your team. You're hiring people. You might have the most amazing company ever. And simply because you're not a good communicator and you don't explain what you do well, nobody will buy it and nobody will give you any money and nobody will want to work for you.
Welcome back to another installment of Perspective Podcast. My name is Devin. I'm here with my co-host, Mitch Harley. And today we have on Hanoi Morillo. Welcome to the show, Hanoi.
Hi, thank you so much for this invitation. And really looking forward to have an amazing conversation with you.
Well, that makes three of us, I think. Let's get the ball rolling here in terms of us getting to know you and what you do. Can you share Cole's notes of your background, where you came from and what you're up to?
Sure. So I'm originally from Spain, so the old Europe, but I've lived in a few countries. I've lived obviously in Spain, I've lived in Ireland, I've lived in Canada, in the United States, in Colombia and South America, and I've traveled and worked for like around 30 countries. So I'm a little bit of a nomad, and I've had the pleasure to have a very global personal and professional experience and career, which is amazing. And I spent the last 20 years in basically mostly in tech. So I spent 12 years at a company that is really well known. I spent 12 years of my professional career at Google. I worked at IBM, and then I took an executive role at a very well-known Canadian bank called Scotiabank. And I also worked at KPMG. I've done a little bit of, I would say, a great journey throughout big corporations and definitely growing in the corporate ladder and getting to like executive roles, which has been super exciting. But in parallel to that, and obviously I've been to many countries in all these companies, so that is probably for another conversation. But in parallel to that, I always wanted to kind of build my own thing. So as probably most people in this podcast know, it is very difficult to really build a business while you're having a full-time job. So obviously I failed miserably at trying to do that, but that led me to start mentoring startups in terms of like digital transformation, digital knowledge, information, leadership, and whatnot. And that brought me to, not only investing time or experience and knowledge, but also starting to invest money in startups. And that put me in a really interesting position as I became a shark for the Shark Tank TV program in South America and Colombia. So as you can see, like I've been to many places. I've worked in big corporations. I've been on random TV shows. I've published books. And now I co-founded my company, Phoebe, where we've transitioned from B2C to B2B fintech to customer intelligence. So let's say it's been an interesting journey.
That is an incredible bio. I was so distracted here. I'm trying to pull the thread through Google, IBM, and then Scotia. I get that it's tech. Is there anything specifically you can share about how those are all connected? What did you do for each of them?
Sure. So obviously, I did start my career at KPMG, which is, I would say, the outlier in my career because it's so far from what I do right now. But it was a great base because I was auditing companies and you learn a lot from different business models and whatnot. And that gave me a lot of, I would say, strength and courage to actually go to Google. So when I joined Google, that was 2005. So it's been a long time ago. I joined Google when Google was a search box. So it was the up and coming. I remember talking to friends and family about like, hey, I'm leaving. I was growing. I was doing really well at KPMG. And I was just like, hey, I'm leaving. I'm going to Google. And they were like, Google? Like Google? Like the search thingy? And I was like, yeah. And I'm moving to Ireland to work for them. And they were like, what the fuck are you doing, right? And look what Google is now. So I went through that amazing journey of seeing Google grow. And basically all the different roles that I've had at Google were related to, or were actually focused, most of them, in working with external partners, with clients of Google, helping them to understand how they can use Google to transform their businesses from marketing to product design to tech. So I was part of that early wave of people that had an understanding of what digital transformation truly meant. And having that conversation with companies that were struggling, trying to understand what digital meant at that moment and how that was going to impact their businesses. So that led me to work with Fortune 500, meet a lot of amazing C-levels across basically every I would say major company right now in the world, if you can think about it. And just work with them in their process of transformation, obviously with Google as the cornerstone, right? Like Google's technology, Google's products. So yeah, and that was an incredible adventure. I loved Google. I think it's an amazing company to work for. And after I did the rounds, so I moved from Europe to, the Americas. In the middle, I actually went to Southeast Asia as well. So I had the opportunity to work in a couple of projects in Singapore, in Korea, in Japan, in India. And after I did all the rounds, what happened is that I stopped progressing and I stopped growing. So I grew really fast for a few years, and then it happens. You plateau a little bit, and I was craving a new challenge. I don't like to be in my comfort zone, and Google became my comfort zone. I knew everything that I needed to know in terms of where to go, who to speak with. I knew my clients, I knew the portfolio, I knew the opportunities, I knew the products. It was comfortable. And I feel very itchy when I'm comfortable. So I started listening to the calls that were getting to me and to the emails that were getting to me that I was never open to, with opportunities elsewhere. And then is when I got a very interesting call from IBM, where they told me that they had this amazing digital innovation unit called IBM iX, and that they were trying to make it successful in Latin America, but they had not been able to, because every company associates IBM with the guys in the blue suit, the hardware, the core systems, the mainframes, right? And they don't necessarily associate IBM with a company that can bring innovation to you. And I was just like, wow, that is going to be so fucking difficult. And that is my calling. So that is why I switched to IBM. And I was, for a couple of years, changing the perception of IBM in Latin America. So I spent 2 years basically on a plane going to Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Mexico, Brazil, building that kind of new wave for IBM. And then after a couple of years of being on an airplane, right, I started to get a little bit exhausted as well. And I got a really interesting call from a Scotiabank, where they told me we need to transform our digital banking into a business unit. So we need to be able to build capabilities and build a business unit. So we need to stop talking about we are digitizing retail, and we need to start talking about we have a digital business. We have a digital bank that actually works, right? And I thought that it was a beautiful opportunity. And also it was an opportunity for me to be part of, or to be on the client side. Because I was, Google, I was facing clients, IBM, I was facing clients, KPMG, I was facing clients. I was always kind of the third party. So I was craving also to have that kind of, internal role. And being an executive at a financial institution is an adventure itself, I have to say. So that is kind of my kind of the linking line in between those steps.
Yeah, I have a ton of questions, but it really depends on which direction we want to go, because I even think of like what you were talking about with IBM. Basically, they were looking for you to rebrand them in that market. And rebranding, that's a huge adventure. And so my question with that is, especially for our audience of, small to mid-level entrepreneurs, sometimes they've went down a path that maybe wasn't as niche, or maybe they have found a different niche that serves a different group of clients, but it also involves rebranding. Where do you feel that rebranding is worthwhile, or is it something that can happen organically, or is it something that has to be strategized? When you look at some of these big corporations that wanted to rebrand, they're almost so established that they need to invest tons of money into rebranding. But from a smaller perspective, is rebranding something you can do organically?
Yeah. So, Mitch, that is a great question, because I'm literally going through that process right now with my own company. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, when you look at Phoebe is a company of 5. It depends on where you are and your accent. 5 years will both work. We started as a B2C company that actually competed with companies like Mint, who is now sunsetting, right? Or like it was a mix between like Mint, a personal financial advisor, and Google Pay and Apple Pay. It was kind of a mix of all of that. And we were born like this. And now we're doing customer intelligence. So it's a huge evolution. And with that comes the name of the company, for example, we've kept, but we've had to rebrand kind of our suite of solutions. And I would say that depending on the stage that you're at, if it makes a strategic sense for you to make a change, you should definitely do it. And when you're a smaller company, it's not like you don't need millions of dollars. Like if Amazon, let's think of Twitter, right? Like now X, like that could be another conversation, but that has been, let's put it like nicely, it's been an interesting process, right? The interesting process or the interesting aspect of it as well is that it was so widely announced, right? That it's like everybody knows that now Twitter is X, but who is talking about X? Everybody's still talking about Twitter, right? So there is a huge effort that needs to happen behind to change people's minds, but you need to change millions of people's minds. In the case of most startups, maybe you have to change 100 people's minds, or maybe the lower thousands. And literally, you're going to be so close to them that you're going to be able to say, hey, by the way, this is what we did, this is what we're in, and we are renaming ourselves. And now, we're gonna be moving from name X to name Y. And I think that it's worth the risk if it's a very important strategic move for you, meaning changing your name, changing your brand is going to mean something. It's going to have an impact on your business now and moving forward. It's going to be easier for you to sell, for example, because, I don't know, your new brand is going to be more easily recognizable or is more intuitive. Whatever the reason is, I wouldn't be so afraid unless, again, you have years and years of brand establishment and it poses like, a lot of investment. But for most cases, and especially for startups, it is a process. It's a painful process, sure. But again, if it makes sense, is you're like, in your heart, you're like, it doesn't make sense that we're called this anymore because we don't do this or because it's just not who we are anymore. Startups, we evolve. So your brand name might have to evolve as well. And I think it's a matter of communication, and that communication is not going to cost you a lot of money because in most cases, maybe it's just an email to your clients if you're a B2B, or maybe it's just a push notification if you're a B2C, or just an email to your users. And I think that as long as you explain as well the reason why you make them part of the rebrand, it's not that complicated. I think that the difficult part is for you as a business leader, as a business owner, to make the decision. That is typically sometimes harder than the communication itself. and it's more dramatic for you because you're attached to that name, right? To actually let it go and change into something else. But I think it's a great question. And again, every company will be different. I think there's a formula for everyone. But that would be kind of my opinion as well, based on what I've seen. And how powerful sometimes a brand name could be, and how detrimental it could be if you don't make enough time because you are not capable of just letting it go and making that decision and having that change happen.
It really speaks to the iterative process that is entrepreneurialism.
Right.
Being able to come up with an idea, try it out, and take the data that you uncover as a result of the efforts that you put forward and use that to help steer whatever ship that you're building. What I think you're pointing at too is that the size of the ship, it kind of matters, right? If you have a small ship, it's really easy. It's really agile. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
You can make shifts, you can change things. But if it's a big one, let's say like Coca-Cola, for example, if Coca-Cola started making TVs, we'd be a little taken aback by that, I think.
Yeah.
Even if Coca-Cola started making a different drink, what would they have to do?
Yeah.
They'd have to make it a whole entirely different brand and a different product. So when do you make that distinction in what you do for people? Like, when do you say, it's a good idea and it's a bad idea?
You know what? Let's touch on the Coca-Cola example, because I think that is a huge illustration of what is going on in the market. And let's think of Coca-Cola and let's think of Tesla. Tesla launched a tequila, right? Like, so you could buy Tesla tequila, right?
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. So you need to honestly just Google it. The bottle is fucking amazing. It's like a little energy icon made of glass. It's just a silver stand. It looks like a collection bottle. And I think that the retail price was something like $290.
Wow.
Yes. And it was sold out in just a few minutes. And now people are reselling it for like $1,000, $1,500.
Unbelievable.
And people were surprised, but they were more excited than surprised. And they were like, yeah, sure, it's Tesla. They can do whatever they want. They can create a new product, right? And they can come up with that. But they've created a company and a company culture and a company philosophy that allows them to do that whenever they want. If now Tesla launches water, we'll buy Tesla water. You know what I mean? They have that. They've created that. Coca-Cola. Yes. Coca-Cola is in the... Sorry, go ahead.
People expect innovation from Tesla.
Exactly.
If they just made cars, people would start to get disappointed.
Yes, exactly. People expect innovation. People expect change. We don't expect that from Coca-Cola, right? If Coca-Cola does something that is just completely different, we will be like, what the fuck are they doing?
So how do you avoid looking like fly by night? You know what I mean? You just on to the next shiny object. You keep doing this over and over again, and people that are around you or the people that you serve, I can see how that could become confusing. How do you avoid that?
100%. I mean, I think that it is very important, especially when you are, and I think that is the issue that I think that we all have as entrepreneurs, is that it's so easy to follow the next trend, right? Because as entrepreneurs, you want your company to be successful. And sometimes when you see a new shiny object, you're like, that is what is the thing that is going to make me successful, right? And it's so easy just to, just go with the flow of new trends. Now everybody wants to do something with generative AI, right? And it's the new thing. And you're like, that is what is going to make me successful. And you're like, I don't know, you're making organic milk. So how are you going to use generative AI? I don't know, but I'm going to use generative AI. Right. So I think that it is great when you have a business that allows you to innovate, but I think that you cannot lose focus on what truly matters and what is kind of the core of your business. Or if you're involved in your business, just find the next thing you're going to focus on that makes sense for to what you already know, what you've already built in the past, and what your path is. Like, I think that when you start to making jumps in several directions, even for you as a business leader, it's just impossible to manage. it's impossible to manage a team where you're changing the focus like every 2 months, when you're just chasing something else. When you chase things, that means that you don't have clarity in what you're building, right? And I think that there is a fine line, but I think that we cannot confuse bringing innovation and doing something maybe on the side that it can be cool for a business and can be actually of value to the brand, and it's something that can be done at no impact, right? For Tesla, creating a tequila is like nothing. You know what I mean? It's not creating, it's not having any negative impact. It's nothing. It could be probably someone at Tesla that knows a lot about tequila, and they were like, yeah, do it, and we'll give you the brand. That situation is very different from, hey, I'm a startup. I have 20 people, right, in the team. And today we're doing A, tomorrow we're going to be doing B, and the next day we're going to be doing C, because I simply see that these are the trends in the market. That is just not sustainable. So I think that you can definitely innovate, but that innovation has to come from the things that you know and kind of the path that you want to follow. And definitely has to be something that builds on top of what you already have, right? And if you need to steer in a complete different direction, just make sure that you validate that is the right direction, because there are so many times that you're going to be able to pivot. You know what I mean? So again, it's a very interesting conversation, but it's very complex for every business and for every leader, for every entrepreneur. But I would say definitely innovate, but do innovations that make sense and then bring you, some added value and not a complete distraction from what you're doing.
Do you find that people, when they see that what we're talking about, the next shiny object or maybe a popular trend that people are cashing in on, if you see it at that point, it's almost too late to an extent? Like, if everyone's making money on this, for you to come to the table now, wouldn't you be better off not jumping on the bandwagon and trying to find something else? Like, for example, the Tesla releases a tequila. It's a huge success. Well, now another company like Mercedes comes out with a bourbon, and everyone's like, what are you doing? You're copying Tesla, right? And and it fails. It has the potential to fail like that. But they look at Tesla and be like, well, Tesla did it and it worked. How come it didn't work for us? And it's like, because you missed that timeline.
And it's not only the timeline. Yeah, but it's not, I think that for sure, like, the timeline is correct, but it's also the type of company that you're building. Mercedes is not Tesla. The clients and the drivers of Mercedes are not Tesla drivers. Like, I'm a Tesla driver, by the way, right? I don't know that I would go in a Mercedes ever, right? It's not my type of car. It's not my type of brand, right? So you have to build for your clients, for your users. You can innovate in a way that makes sense for your users. And maybe there is something that you love, and who knows, maybe there is someone at Mercedes that is just like, I've been always wanted to launch like a bourbon Mercedes, and look at Tesla, they're doing it now. How come we haven't done it before? Because that innovation is not right for your clients.
Okay, so
and
this
that's the key as well.
This points at something else that you mentioned, Hanoi, the corporate perception of like the general public. And first of all, I want to point at two things, because it's the responsibility of the people that are running the corporation to ensure that they have a clear vision for what they want that perception to be. But then it's also a part of the marketing and sales department to take that high level, intangible idea and bring it to life and make it real. And it sounds to me like you've played a pretty significant role in that in a bunch of very well-known companies. How do you manage a task like that?
So that is a great question. So first of all, you need to get the buy-in internally, right? And people forget about that. Sometimes we focus on the marketing, the communication, the external portion of like changing a perception or building a new perception of the company. And we typically forget that the first thing that we need to do is to build that internally. So that is, for example, what I focus on a lot when I was at IBM or when I was at Scotiabank was let's have that conversation internally first. Because if we don't believe that we are innovators, that we are a tech-first company, that we can bring innovation, that we can do things differently, right? When we go with that message externally, there is going to be a huge gap and there is going to be a conflict. And the company is not going to be able to deliver on what we are telling the external world. And when you are not capable of delivering, then is when, bad things happen, because people are like, well, you're telling me that you're whatever, but like, hey, I go and talk to you and you're not that, you're the old self. So in my case, what I learned, or based on my experiences, first, bring that conversation internally. Have people living that new perception, that new company you're building, living through those values, building commitment to deliver on the new values. And when you have that, then you go and build your, external marketing campaigns and make all the noise that you want. But again, right? If you are saying that you're X, but every time you talk to an employee, they're saying they're Twitter, there is an internal job that wasn't done, right? If I'm at a bank and I'm telling you, like, we are digital and we're digital first, right? And you talk to somebody and they tell you, oh yeah, send us a letter to solve the problem, right? Then you're like, you're not digital first. That is the person, right? The employee that is telling you that hasn't understood that the first response is, I don't know, send me an email, use our app, right? So it's, from my point of view, any rebranding is first internal, especially when it comes to not only a change in logos or a change in name, but a change in your philosophy as a company, change in your value proposition, change in what you're telling to the world that you are, right? So that is kind of what I learned over years, and after kind of doing it myself at big corporations. The first step is always your own people, your own team, your own company, right? Yeah.
What do you do in the event that it goes wrong? We've seen it before publicly, like a company tries a new logo or tries a rebrand of some kind, and it's just very poorly received. What's the plan of action when that happens?
And so I think that nowadays all companies understand that they always need to have a plan B. And then I think that your plan B is probably a conversation that is as important as your plan A in terms of rebranding. It happens a lot of times, and we've seen it, right? Where even the logo, which is something that you see come on, we're just putting, I don't know, it was a square and now it's a little bit more rounded and maybe colors are sharper and people are complaining. And sometimes I think that you need to decide when the complaints are very superficial and they don't truly have an impact, but it's something that will pass, and when there is something that is actually telling you that whatever change you made actually is truly causing a rejection. People don't want to interact with you anymore because of the change that you made. And in that case, I truly believe that having a great PR team is super important to communicate, to understand what are your next steps. Do you need to apologize? Do you need to reverse? But I think that is all about having the protocols in place to listen to your users, to be able to measure those conversations and have the mechanisms in place to take the right actions. Because again, each situation is going to be different. So it's more about how do you prepare and how do you understand that you need to prepare just in case? Because I think that assuming that making a change for sure is going to be successful is quite naive at this time, right? And this era.
Let's take this conversation and let's apply it to a really controversial one, being Bud Light, right? They got ran through the ringer.
Yeah.
Regardless of people's opinion of the topic or reason for it, the fact is that wasn't just a bunch of people online complaining about a potential message or agenda being pushed through. It was physical sales that were just done. They were gone. They disappeared. And people were literally refusing to buy the product. It wasn't just a viral video anymore.
Yeah.
And I think what was almost just as damaging as all of that, and you can totally correct me if I'm off here, but their scramble to fix the problem was a very like, we're American firefighter, horse riding patriots. And everyone's like, no, that's what you were. And we're still not coming back because of this, bullcrap ad that you're putting out, because you lost that credibility. Is there a chance for them to come back? Is it something that you can't come back from? Where was the blunder there? Because there's been a huge amount of podcast topics on it, but just in context of what we're talking in the rebranding, like they basically need to rebrand to come back from this.
Yeah, I honestly, the situation with Bud Light, I think is, for me, like, it's even difficult to comprehend. I was shocked at the backlash. I was shocked again. Like, I'm not ingrained into American culture, so for sure there are things that I couldn't comprehend. But I was shocked at the backlash. Just for making kind of a partnership with an LGBTQ plus person, I was just like, wow, right? And I think that, whatever, like that situation was so complex, I don't think there is an appropriate response. I don't think there is anything that could have like improved the situation for Bud Light, because it was super bad, and it was really bad from all points of view. So obviously, all the conservatives were obviously opposed. There are no surprises in there. But also, even the LGBTQ plus community then was angry because the response wasn't right as strong as they were expecting. So it's just like it got to a point where it didn't matter what they did; it was going to be wrong, right? And I think that is a really, really difficult situation. But again, I think it's going to be kind of a case study for us to really understand.
Because I see that one.
Again, like there's no correct situation. There's no, how do you correct that? Because now you cannot be now against inclusion. Right. Because you bluntly say that you're an inclusive company and you want to make your communications inclusive. And I think that is, from my point of view, I think that is great. Again, I'm still shocked at the backlash. But again, that message is... Huh?
Right. I'm not shocked at the backlash. And the reason being is you made this comment earlier that Mercedes can't come out with a tequila because they know that people that ride a Mercedes aren't going to go buy their tequila.
And then it is true. Bud Light drinkers are not...
The Bud Light drinkers, if you go back through the ages of the past 40 years of every commercial, that is not the demographic. And so trying to change your audience into what maybe your values are, that's a problem. Yeah. Because you're not there for that. You're there to serve them. And so to me, whatever side you stand on is kind of irrelevant. The fact is they didn't read their audience. They assumed.
100%. You're completely right. You're completely right with that. But it's still, for me, again, like even with that, obviously they were not catering to their audience. Yeah. But I thought that the backlash was like just in proportion was just like it was way worse. It was like out of hand. Like it was just like, I think that was impossible to plan, that the backlash was going to be like so bad. But again, and we go to the conversation before, like you need to cater to your audience, and your audience, maybe they are not like super progressive, like, you know what I mean? And maybe they could have done something in a different brand. Maybe they could have done a spin-off. They could have done a different product that was more catered to that audience that they wanted to reach, because maybe for them internally, again, they're a super inclusive company. They want to make products where the communication is inclusive, but that wasn't Bud Light, obviously, right? But I think that it got out of hand, and I think that nobody kind of predicted that was going to happen. Again, probably some time of silence on their part will just, get everybody back. Because at the end of the day, if you like Bud Light and you like the product and you like how it tastes, you will eventually, I think that you will come back. It is possible that they're going to lose some clients forever, probably. they've probably learned a lot about human psychology with this process. But I think that some time of silence is probably the best tool that they can use. And again, you can create a spin-off product that brings those values of inclusiveness that you want to bring, and just have the conversations that your audience want to have when it comes to that point, right?
I think if they drank Bud Light Lime, they'd probably come back at some point. But.
It really does point at how important it is to listen and pay attention, because when I see this whole thing, and especially the way that you guys are even polarized in the conversation about how the backlash was either this or that or whatever, having a company that serves a certain group of people speak to that group of people about an issue that is not even relevant to them, that I think became the problem for both sides. On one side, it was we're just over here trying to have a good time and have a few beers. We don't need to bring sexuality into that. And then on the other hand, you have the people that are part of that LGBTQ community who are saying, yeah, listen, we don't need that conversation to be had right now. It's clear that you're pandering now, and we disrespect that. Like, it's disrespectful to us. So you got to really have a pulse on it. And the thing that you mentioned that I think really jumped out at me was the American culture. You mentioned at the top of the show that you're well-traveled. You've been all over the place. I can see from all your experience that you are wise in terms of just your experience and the people that you've been exposed to. How much of a role do you think that plays in how you serve the people that you serve? Is culture a big part of how you communicate?
I think so. I think that more than, I don't know if culture is always being able to adapt to the different cultures that I might speak to on a daily basis. So, for example, just to illustrate this week, and it's been just a couple of days, I've spoken to 2 companies in Argentina, 1 company in Paraguay, 1 company in the US, 1 company in Canada, 1 company in Mexico. And every accent is different. Every language is different because, Mexico doesn't speak the same Spanish as Paraguay or Argentina, right? And yet you still need to be able to be relevant to all of them and understand how they express themselves in a meeting, for example. The things that are normal maybe in Mexico, they're not normal in Argentina, right? So you need to be able to understand those nuances that each culture is going to have, these different words, the different accents. And again, be able to be relevant and understanding of all of them. And for me, that is amazing. Like, it's something that I love, and I try to learn more and more and more and more and more. Obviously, and now that I'm back to living in the US, again, the US is just a fascinating country. And there is a lot to learn, but it's still there are moments where I'm still surprised, right? And it's just I think it's probably for everyone, but I think that being exposed to different cultures and different countries, it is amazing for you as a human being, and definitely it's amazing for you as a business leader. That is for sure. I have no doubts, and it's something that I will get in a fight to defend. Get exposed to as many cultures as you can, absorb everything that is great about those cultures, use it to your advantage, use it to your own enjoyment, and use it to lead. Because we're leading nowadays, almost every company is global, meaning you may have a couple of employees that are working remotely from, India, or from somewhere in, northern Canada, or from Europe. And I think it's great that you can lead a diverse company and build a diverse company. And that starts with you as well, being diverse, right?
So you had made the comment that you in South America were on a Shark's Tank version there. I want to kind of dig into that, because I think right now any entrepreneur sitting here goes, one day I want to be on Shark's Tank, or one day I want to be on, we have Dragon's Den in Canada here. But there's a lot more than just what you see on TV that goes into it, right? It's not a 30-second, $1 million offer that you guys get in front of you. So as far as from your side of the table, what do you look for in a business? And maybe it's not revenue, maybe it's character, maybe it's somebody's decisions that they've made in their company. Like, what is it that kind of sparks your interest to say, hey, that's something that's worth investing in? Maybe it doesn't look good on the books, but there's something else there that I'm interested in. I'd like to hear more about. What are some of the things there that maybe aren't visible to an audience?
Sure, that's an amazing question, because it is true. On TV, you see approximately like 8 to 10 minutes. But we might be with the entrepreneurs for like an hour. So yeah. So for me, there are like a few, like I would say 3 things are very important. One is definitely the people behind the business. Who are the leaders that I have in front of me? Do I believe, based on the conversations that we're having or the background that they show to us, that they're the right people to lead the business? And that is very subjective. I might think that you, Mitch, are amazing to lead a podcast, and maybe my other shark in the panel, they see something that is completely different. So it's very subjective, but I do like to have that read on people. And especially when you're in Shark Tank, typically you get companies that are at a very early stage, and they want you to get involved. And you want to get involved. You want to mentor them. You want to guide them. That means you're going to be spending some time with them. So that is the first thing that I think, right? Like, is this the right leader for this company? Are they going to be able to build and take the company to the next level? And do I want to spend time with them? Right? And that is kind of the first thing that you see in the way in which they communicate, how they respond to questions. You see if they are humble, if they're not, if they know their business, if they don't, you know what I mean? So you see that in that conversation with them, you can actually get, especially because they're under pressure. So it is great to see them performing under pressure. So you get a quick sense of who they are. So for me, that is one of the elements. The second thing that I always look for is if they have validated the business. And I don't need a product that is finished. I need validation, meaning, do you know for certain that people or businesses are going to buy what you're building? And how have you done that? And it could be that maybe you spent a month showing people a picture of what you're going to build, and like 99% said, I'm going to buy it, and I'm going to buy it for this price. Like, it could be something like that. But I want I want businesses that are validated, right? Or products that have been validated, solutions that have been validated, not just an idea, right? I want to be some execution of that idea, even if it's a very, very early stage. And the third thing is definitely, I do want to see like healthy numbers. And that doesn't mean that I'm expecting you to already be a profitable company. You're probably in very early stage. But what is your path to revenue? How are you building the business? Are you being cost efficient? Are you managing your money really well? You know what I mean? Because you see companies that just splurge, and it's just like, you have nothing and you're already overspending. Like, if that is how you manage money, I don't want to invest in that, right? So you want to see that kind of, money management, if you will, that kind of makes sense. And you want to see some healthy numbers in that regard. And again, you can be losing money, burning money, but you are doing it in a way that makes sense, and that is cautious, and that is strategic, you know what I mean? And you know your business numbers really well. I think that there is nothing worse when you're in Shark Tank and you're asking to the CEO, the co-founders, about their business numbers or their unit economics, whatever it is that explains their business, and they are hesitant or they contradict each other, right? And you're like, how is it possible that you don't have the same information, right? So those are like 3 things that for me are very important. And as you can see, in some of them, it's a little bit subjective, right? And it goes beyond just kind of what the business is or just the P&L of the business, right?
I like that, because I've always said the numbers tell this part of the story, but they don't tell the whole story at times. And it's so much more than numbers. Something that always sat with me when I watch those programs is, these guys come in and they choose sentiment over logic. and they're sentimental about their business. And so in their mind, you come up with an offer and they're saying, I want $1 million for 10%, which is like a ridiculous, so you're like, I'll give you the $1 million, but I want 60%. And they're like, no. And I'm sitting here going like 40% of what you will have in a year is more than 100% of what you'll have in the next 10 years if you don't buy into this product. Like, am I just like overly critical yelling at my TV as an entrepreneur sitting here? Or is there like, am I missing the mark on something?
No. I think that, there are a few things. Obviously, the US version of Shark Tank is very different in the sense that, you have these billionaires sitting as sharks, and there is a show component that I think is more elevated than in other branches, right? And then at the end of the day, this is a reality TV show, and you want to put a little bit of sauce, right, in it. So obviously, there is that, and there is the other part, which is you are truly negotiating with your money, and you want to make the best for that, right? And you have the sharks that are truly thinking about, I want the best for my money and for my investment and my position in this company if I invest in it. And then you have the sharks that are a little bit of like, definitely I want a great position for me, but I don't want to kind of screw the entrepreneurs over, because if you dilute your company very early on, you're fucked for like next rounds of investment. So I think that you also, as an investor, you also need to be smart and make something that is great for you, but also something that sets the company for success in the future, thinking that they will probably waste more money. So, that is how, theoretically, that is how the conversation should go. But then you're in a TV show, right? And you want to have that negotiation to go to the extreme. And again, depending, there are certain businesses where you can definitely see that they're not going to need to raise more money, that they're already having like an interesting cash flow, that is going to be something that has like positive cash, like very quickly. And if you give them money now, that will like really take their company from 1 to 100 in no time. And you definitely won like a significant amount of shares, because the value that your investment now is going to have on the business, right? And you also assume or understand that business is not going to need a huge amount of investment, or not even more investment in the future. So you have a unique opportunity now as an investor to get maybe half of the company, and half of a company that is going to be profitable, right? So a lot of that plays as well in the conversation. So you just think that I think that as investor, you're always trying to literally paint the full picture and think of the present, think of like, are they going to need more money or not? How do I do it in a way that is successful for them and it's also successful for me? And all of that is playing into account. Plus, you have the lights and you have the cameras on you, and you're not giving any direction in the program, but they do tell you, make sure we entertain and educate people, right? So you also have that as part of the conversation.
You mentioned that some things are really obvious and really clear, like having the money right, knowing that there's validation for the product or service or whatever, and being really, really clear. The one thing that I think is the subjective part is the people part. Mm-hmm. I'd love to get your perspective on what makes a good person in terms of being investable, but also in your experience, what specifically in terms of like skills or personality or education would set that person up for we'll call it a higher probability of success? Because success is still a gamble. You still have to take a chance, try a thing, figure out if it works or doesn't work, and all that other stuff. But there are things that you have, or as a person, that are soft, hard skills, whatever, your personality, your ability to communicate, whatever. What is a priority for you? What do you look for in a person?
So I think, and not only thinking about kind of my own kind of, point of view, but I'll tell you in general what I've seen that is successful in general in the market, and like certain skills that I see that is kind of a common thread for all the successful entrepreneurs that are out there. And there are a few things. for sure, communication skills are key. You need to tell your story, the story of your company. You need to sell your company constantly. You're constantly pitching. You're either pitching to investors, you're either pitching to future clients, or you're constantly pitching. So, and also you're talking to your team, you're hiring people. So having founders, or at least one of the founders, or someone that is high up out there that is like making strategic decisions, is a great communicator, is absolutely key. You might have the most amazing company ever, and simply because you're not a good communicator and you don't explain what you do well, nobody will buy it and nobody will give you any money and nobody will want to work for you. So you're screwed. So communication, I think, is key. And communication in all formats. Being able to write a proper email, being able to present in public. So public speaking in a meeting room, in front of a camera, online. Communication is key. And communication in all senses, like presentation, anything that has to do with you speaking or trying to translate a message to someone else. It is absolutely key. Absolutely key. So that is kind of, for me, is the number one. If you're in front of an entrepreneur and that person cannot properly communicate, I mean, they are going to struggle. Like I can tell you as much. The second thing I think that is very important is that if you're not, you become then an active listener. Especially when you're raising capital, I have this conversation very often. Raising capital sucks, to be honest. Like I haven't met anyone that loves raising capital. Like any entrepreneur is like, oh, yeah, to raise another $1 million, this is amazing. Why? Because you have to talk to VCs, to investors, and it is a pain. You need to prepare for every single meeting, do the research. It is painful. And especially when you're early, you get 99% of the answers that you get are a no. Now, your position could be like, these people don't know what they're talking about. They're missing. We're the fucking best. Or your position could be, what are they telling me? What is the feedback that maybe is common across all of them, right? So if you're not, you become an active listener. You ask great questions and you pay a lot of attention to the answers. So you become a person that is constantly seeking for feedback, right? And that is humble enough to take the feedback, listen to it, and continue to ask for it, right? They tell you, okay, like, will you mind telling me the reasons why you don't think that we're a good investment for you? Oh, you don't match our investment thesis. Could you remind me what your investment thesis is? Right? And maybe that investment thesis doesn't make sense for you. And you're like, okay, but like there is something that we're missing here. And maybe there is something that we could do to have a better company so we're more investable, right? Again, you're going to meet with a lot of entrepreneurs. You can learn from anyone, from the 18-year-old that just had an idea and is trying to build something to the 75-year-old that has been in like, I don't know how many companies and is building his or her, like, I don't know, 28th company, right? You become an active listener because what you're going to learn is unreal. And you're an active listener that is humble to understand that everybody can be a master, that you can learn from absolutely everybody, right? And I think that is key. And that goes especially to the guys or to the people with a profile like mine, where I coming from the corporate world, like 20 years, working at Google, at IBM, like SVP role at Scotiabank, investing in companies in a freaking TV show. And we believe that we know it all, right? And that is the greatest mistake. So I think that being an active listener, having that like mentality of like, I'm just new and I'm just here to learn, and asking everyone and learning from everyone, I think is amazing. So I see like people that are being very successful, but entrepreneurs that are being successful in general, they are active listeners. They learn from everyone. They ask great questions. They are curious and they are looking for feedback about themselves and about their business, right? and they communicate really well. So those are the two things that are very, I would say, on the soft skill spectrum that make a difference.
As you were speaking, I was reminded of an old proverb that had a huge impact on whatever it was at the time for me, my success. It is to be in pursuit of finding right rather than being in pursuit of being
right. Mm-hmm.
I love that is a part of what you shared.
I like it. I have not heard that, but I like it. And 100% agree. 100% agree. Yeah.
Hanoi, you've been absolutely generous with your time, and I can't tell you how grateful I am that even me, just listening and asking questions, I have learned a lot in this episode. So thank you for that. Parting words here before we wrap everything up. I always like to ask if there was one thing that you could give to somebody else who's on this journey entrepreneurially, in terms of a piece of advice that would help them further themselves down that path, what would that be for you? What's the one thing that you would share with somebody there?
I honestly hate it when it's the one thing, because it's like there are so many that I would like to say.
You're allowed 1.5.
So yes, okay. So I would say the famous phrase "fail fast." I think that we underestimate how important that is. We become very attached to what we build, and it happened to me. So I'm speaking based on experience, not about reading about a book talking about it. Like, it took me a while to decide that we needed to actually change gears in our business, because I was so attached to the initial idea. I thought it was so amazing. I was just like, this has to work, right? And I wish I would have applied all my learnings about failing fast and make those decisions about change that you might need to make as fast as the failing, right? And again, the failing means learn fast, right? Fail fast is learning fast. But I think being in a startup, you have that unique opportunity to fail fast. And it is important, and it's the most difficult thing, because that means that what you're building, you're accepting that it's just not working and you need to build something else. But I always say that it's better to build something successful, even if it's something new, something that is not what you initially thought, that building something that is just not going to go anywhere. So take seriously that famous phrase of failing fast, because it's going to help you along the way. That is for sure. So that, and the second thing that I would, so let's say this is a big one thing, take care of yourself. I think that we need to stop believing that as an entrepreneur, you need to work 24/7, and that work and your company is the only thing that you do, and that you're going to sleep, and that you're going to eat well. And if you want to be a great leader for your company, for the people working with you, for your family, for your partner, for your pet, with whoever, just take care of yourself. Like, carve out the time to exercise if you like it. Make sure that you eat as healthy as you can. Dedicate time to you to do nothing, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Avoid the all-nighters. We'll have to pull all-nighters from time to time for sure. That shouldn't be the rule. It should be the exception, right? And I think that is super important. Like, when you go on a plane, they always tell you put the oxygen mask first so you can assist others. And I think that we forget that when we're building businesses. We forget to put the oxygen mask first. So that is definitely something that it might be controversial. Everything, all the successful people, they've been working for whatever, like 24 hours for like 8 years over time. And my point is, maybe they would have been even more successful if they had taken care of themselves, right? We've all seen, like, Elon Musk, like, sleeping for 3 or 4 hours. And you sometimes we see the perfect picture, but we don't see the cost that is coming at. So take care of yourself. It's I think that is a recipe for success, right? And you want to continue to build business and lead. And if your business is not successful now, you want to maybe build another one. You need to have the energy to do it. You need to have the mental sharpness to do it. And that is not going to happen if you're not sleeping, if you're sick, if you have a burnout, right? So it's easy to avoid that situation. We just forget that should be an objective that we should have.
Those are very good 1.5 things for entrepreneurs. I love that. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, Hanoi, to maybe work with you or get some advice, is there a way that somebody could do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Hanoi Morillo, I think, in LinkedIn. So I'm an easy find. And also anyone that wants to even like send me an email directly, my email is hola, so like hello, but in Spanish. So HOLA @hanoimorillo.com. So I welcome as well any emails. But again, you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on LinkedIn, and reach out as well through social media.
Beautiful. We'll link to all that in the show notes. And if you wanted to get in touch with me or Mitch, it's emailtheperspective@gmail.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much, Hanoi. And for everybody listening or watching, we will see you in the next one.